If the Bible's got you tied in knots, if you're burdened with religious thoughts, come grab a drink and join the choir. It's Heretic Happy Hour.
Well, howdy, buckaroos. Welcome to the Heretic Happy Hour podcast. This is our final episode in the Reconstruction series. We can't wait to kick this one off. My name is Keith Giles. I'm one of the other hosts here on the podcast.
Jesus Christ.
Old man Giles.
That's right. Howdy. Hey, yeah, it's Keith, and we have another amazing episode for you guys. Wrapping up the Reconstruction series. I guess we should probably introduce ourselves and get this thing rolling.
Where did that come from, Keith? It's good to hear your regular voice back. Hey, everyone. I'm Katie Valentine. I'm the author of Sex, Slavery, and Self-Control. I wanted to let everyone know real quick as we're getting started. I'm really excited about a class I'm hosting in January with a wonderful colleague of mine on how to find your ideal church. So those of you who have been through the deconstruction process, maybe you're in the middle of Reconstruction, you think there might possibly be a community out there that could love you and accept you for exactly who you are, doubts and all. This class is for you on finding your ideal church and community. So if you're interested, we'll post the link in the show notes, and I would love to have you as part of that.
Well, looky here.
Oh, God.
This here is Derek Day, the author of Deconstructing Religion. And I'm just here to say that I can speak as well Southern as Keith Giles can.
I'm actually Southern, y'all. I'm the only Southerner here.
Get the fuck out of here.
I was born in Tennessee.
Southern Light. I'm deep South Southern.
Oh, all right.
I'm from the south side of Detroit, by the way.
Yeah.
South, yeah.
And I'm from San Jose, California, so I'm not going to fuck around with that Southern accent stuff.
Thank you.
But that makes me Matthew Distefano, the author of many books, most of them shit, but some of them may be good.
Bullshit.
But excited. We're wrapping up a series here, so excited to do that. And what we have in store for folks, who knows? But always excited for another episode.
And guess what, y'all? We got a hotline, a voicemail coming in. So if you want to call into the Heretic Happy Hour and tell us what you think, you can exercise finger dexterity and dial 240-343-7379 and roll that beautiful voicemail footage.
Hi, this is Dave Miller. I am an ordained pastor with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America in California. Already right there makes me kind of a heretic. But I am a long-time listener, first-time caller. I've never thought I'd say that. I was listening to a wonderful podcast by yourselves with the Quantum Reconstruction and Rob Bell. Fantastic stuff. And the notion of creating and recreating and the breath of God into the lump of dirt that became human got my wheels turning. I've preached on this before, but I just wanted to ask you guys, what do you think about the 7 days of creation as written, as documented, as narrated, as whatever in Genesis, about being kind of this path of our creation that we create in the world too, where we have never entered the seventh day, or God has never entered the seventh day, where God rested, for we are always creating and recreating and becoming a new creation. So just wondering your thoughts on this idea. Maybe I'm out of my mind. It is not the first time. Rational minds may disagree, but I also wanted to just gauge what you guys thought, and also just say what a great podcast. It has really brought new life into my life and my preaching. I'm in my 11th year doing this. So again, thank you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
All right.
Dave.
What a cool question.
That was really cool.
Yeah, kill it.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in first on this one.
Go for it.
Because I believe that the 7 days is allegorical. It could have been 1 day, or it could have been 1,000,000 days. Who knows? But I will say this, that that creation is something that I believe that it happened outside of time. So that creation is always being created and recreated. And that ties back into what Dave said about his wonderful comments about the quantum episode.
So, first of all, Dave, I want to know where you went to seminary. And if you went to PLTS, we may know people in common. And I'm kind of curious if our paths ever cross there in Berkeley, if you happen to go there, since you are in California. And this idea of have we never entered into the seventh day is super intriguing to me. And, I could give like a whole historical lecture on the Genesis 1 and how it came to be, but that's not what I sense the question is. The question is what this idea of creating, and I feel very strongly that when we are creators of music, of ideas, of poetry, of even new ways of being, that we're partnering with God, we're co-creating with God.
Amen.
Yeah. And I don't know if we said that in that episode, but it's great we have this question to say it now. And that's so powerful. And it's not even about the end result, but it's about the process of being creators. And I think that's sacred and it's holy. I'm kind of curious about this God having never entered the Sabbath or rested, because rest is so important to creation.
Yeah.
Right. We have to have periods of sort of luxurious rest in order to be able to create. So I kind of like the seventh day rest, that God takes a holy breath, and that we're invited to do that too.
And besides that, omnipresence is everywhere. So there's nowhere that God isn't.
Yeah, exactly. So Matt, what do you think?
Well, I like the idea. I like the idea in that maybe there is some sort of eternality that we haven't entered into of perpetual rest, and we've been adventuring through this life this whole time without entering into that final rest, whatever that may be. But I don't know. I see the value of having rest. Well, if you're like me and you're about to enter your 40s, and I know I'm the young one here, but y'all know that you're not in your 20s anymore. You need rest every day, let alone every week. So, but I like the idea. I like the teasing out of different ideas that aren't quote unquote traditional, and playing with the text on what it might mean for us. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer here.
Yeah, I think it is sort of a two-pronged question. On the one hand, I think I agree with you guys. I don't see Genesis as being a literal documentary of what happened events that were realistically, scientifically true and accurate. I see it more as a parable and a story that, in some ways, it's a parable of the story of Israel, the nation of Israel. They start off, they're with God, everything's great. They fall away, they sin, they disobey, they're cast into exile, and then the process repeats. But it's also, in some ways, too, the Garden of Eden story is also, in some ways, the story of everybody. It's your story, it's my story. I mean, we're born, we're innocent, we're sweet. Then we the first words we learn are no, and then the next one is mine, and right. Then we learn we learn good and evil, the difference between the knowledge of good and evil. We grow, and then we become people that are flawed and have problems. I mean, in many ways, it's the human story as well, and I think it can have many applications. So, but that's just one side of the question. But the question about the rest here's what's funny. I think actually you could support it. Well, quickly, Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I've always thought that that's what Jesus was saying, is that come to me and I will give you this rest. You will enter into this rest, the same rest of the Father, the Sabbath rest of the Father. And but at the same time, though, Jesus also in another place says, my Father is always working. He is always at work, even to this very day. So again, it's sort of both and. Yes, the Father is always creative, always moving, always working, and we are too, because we're abiding in Christ. Christ is in us, and blah blah blah. So it's sort of like both and. We are collaborating and working because the Father is always working, and we're co-creators in that sense. But at the same time, even though that's true, we're also at the same time entering into the rest. So I'm not sure that's an answer or not. I think it's just maybe it is in a weird way. It's not one or the other. I think in a way it's.
But think about it. If God is outside of time, He's working and resting at the same time.
Yeah, and in some ways, so we are too, right? Yep. So we can even, let's say, cooperate with in that process of creation and being creative, but we can even do it from a place of resting. In other words, not from a place of striving and stress. but from a place of resting.
Or of being worthy,
Yes.
right? Having to prove ourselves.
Yes.
And in the quantum kind of world that I like to explore, I kind of wonder if when our incarnated physical bodies die, we go and I feel like our souls are at rest before we come back and we try it again.
Yeah.
If we live many lives, so I feel like we get cosmic periods of rest, work, and creation, and not that we're not creating on the other side, but it's not quite as much work.
The quantum particle appears and disappears, and the wave emerges and dissipates.
Exactly.
Shameless plug, but in the bonfire sessions that's going to come out, Ralph, you're publishing it, so you already agreed to it.
Which is fucking amazing, by the way.
Yeah, and I'll say, Derek, you are writing the foreword, so thank you for that. Mike and I actually talk about this, about like we're weary and tired right now, and all we want to do is rest. But maybe in a thousand years, use that allegorically, we'll want to come back and try our hand at this thing called life again.
So the four of us have been together before.
Oh no.
Creating something. Now we're in this lifetime. We're doing it. Who knows what it'll be next time around? Just putting that out there.
Oh boy.
Who knows?
Who knows?
All right, y'all. This is what a great question. Thank you for calling in. I feel like we're ready to explore our heretic of the week.
Yes.
It's the heretic of the week.
Hi, my name is Jeff Turner, and I am a heretic.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, everybody.
I hope you're as excited as we are about this.
I am. I'm excited to be on the other end of that greeting for once. I've heard it many times. So,
well, yes, welcome, Jeff. If for those who don't know, Jeff is the author of one of the greatest books of all time, From the Blood of Abel, or the author of the let me rephrase. The author of the best part of From the Blood of Abel, the foreword. So, Jeff, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, first question we like to ask people is, why in the world would you introduce yourself as a heretic?
Well, I would like to say it's because I'm so gosh darned orthodox, and the rest of the church is so steeped in heresy, they mistake me as a heretic. But I don't think that highly of myself. And I think the truth is, it's probably because over the years I've become utterly convinced of the fact that God has given himself perfect representation in the person of Jesus, and that person in whom he has revealed himself challenges all notions we have of the divine, and calls us not just to correct our notions of the divine, but to absolutely discard probably 100% of them and rediscover who God is from God's perspective. And I guess when you start messing with stuff like that, people tend to think you're a heretic. I would have thought myself a heretic but a few years back. So I understand.
Well, a few years back, tell us a little bit about that process. How did you go from thinking of it that way until where you are now, of Jesus as the perfect representation of the divine?
Well, when I say a few years, I don't actually mean 3. I mean quite a few more than that, actually. But my journey started. I became a radical, sold out, on fire evangelical Christian when I was about 13 years old. We took a trip down to Pensacola, Florida, to the Brownsville Revival, if you've ever heard of that.
Wait, I was there. I went there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I was
okay.
there many years ago. Yeah, when that was going on.
Okay.
You were there, but
right. Well, it could have been. Who knows? Yeah, but so we took a trip down there when I was 13, and we took a trip back there every year until I graduated high school. And my wife and I actually ended up moving down there, and we lived there for our first 2 years of marriage. And I attended their Bible college when it still existed. So that's kind of my history. I grew up just in the radical, on fire, going after God with every fiber of my being sort of vein of Christianity that was going around in the 90s during the renewal movement. And, into my 20s, I fasted every other day of my life. I prayed 8 to 12 hours a day most weeks. I was driven. I was obsessed. I went after this thing like a maniac. And, it's hard to exactly pin down where the whole process started. But for me, when I was still in Bible college and I was doing all of these things and going after God in this manner, I've always kind of been a mystic at heart, and that's always kind of been my relationship with God and how it functions. And I tried to get away from that for a while, but it found me again. But during this period of time, when I'm just going after God like a madman, like I said, fasting every other day, praying 8 to 12 hours a day, I started to have dreams where different preachers that I loved and respected, who would never actually say the things to me that they said to me in my dreams, would come and just preach something approximating what we would now call like radical grace and inclusion and things like that. And I had no grid for these things at the time. And I would wake up and plead the blood of Jesus over my headboard because I thought the devil was trying to get in my dreams and deceive me and all that. And but those things softened me and kind of opened me up to the possibility of embracing a more gracious version of God later on. But it really took me quite a few years to get to the point where I was able to actually embrace that. It took me pastoring for a long time. I became a pastor very young, and it took me really experiencing the realities of life and the faultiness of the system that I was involved in, and really realizing that it doesn't work a lot of the times in real life, and just burning myself out and exhausting myself and nearly destroying my marriage and everyone else within a 10,000 mile radius of me. And I finally just hit a wall, and I took my beliefs as far as I think they could take me. And I realized they did not work. And it was at that point that I remembered the grace that was trying to be revealed to me back in my early days in Bible college, and sort of had a return to that experience. And a lot happened after that, but that's kind of the beginnings of my story anyways.
The your comment about dreams, and it's so capturing me because I love dreams. I've always been a vivid dreamer, and I love that you had this kind of slow unfold even while your waking self was really worried about it being demonic at the whole time. It sounds grace-filled and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah, it was very terrifying because, like I said, at the time I was ensconced in a worldview, a world that was populated by 10,000 demons behind every bush. And, if you one simple act of disobedience during the day, anything from looking at pornography to failing to pick up a gum wrapper on the floor could open a door to the demonic in your life somehow. And so, I was always suspicious of anything that was happening to me. And when I'm having these experiences and the message is absolutely 100% contradicting the message that I embraced and bled, it was terrifying. But at the same time, the gospel when you hear it, like you resonate with it. And I knew it was truth, but I couldn't embrace it. It would have cost too much at the time to embrace it. And so there was like a part of me that knew it was real, but there was a part of me that was fearful, and I consciously renounced it and rejected it. And like I said, it took quite a few years of the cosmos doing the little dance they do and kind of breaking me to the point where I finally realized my need for grace. And yeah.
So I want to go back to something you said earlier. You mentioned that the reason some people think you're a heretic is that it's all about Jesus for you. Well, wouldn't the evangelical or the folks maybe you and I probably hung out with during our younger years and were on fire for, wouldn't they say the same thing? So what? I know you went through a transition, but did that just look like something theological, or did the theology build off these dreams you were having? How did that go?
Yeah, well, I guess when I say to me, God is perfectly given perfect representation of himself in the person of Jesus. When some people hear that, they hear a limiting statement. When they hear Jesus say, I am the way, the truth, and the life, they hear limitation. But when I hear that, I hear liberation. And I think God revealing himself perfectly and definitively as a human being who breathes and sweats and bleeds and lives and exists in the world exactly as we do, and even dies the way that we would die, questioning whether or not his father was even with him. That to me liberates the image of God, and it sets it free. The evangelical notion of Jesus I grew up with was very limiting, and God can only be found in these very, these sort of hermetically sealed environments. But the revelation of God in Jesus set the image of God free. And now, since God has perfectly represented himself in humanity and in something physical, I now find myself liberated to find God in the same, in the everyday stuff of life, the not so pleasant stuff of life, the pleasant stuff of life, just the realities of creation and of the world. And I think to some that goes against the grain of their belief system, because we think God can only be found in these very specific environments and in these very specific settings, and even within certain doctrinal and theological settings. And I just no longer buy that.
It sounds like the old environment that you were in, the one where you were on fire and fasting every other day, which I got to say, kudos. I've never tried that ever at any point in my life.
Good for you.
Wow. Yeah, but it sounds like that environment would have been really suspicious about God being revealed through nature.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was you were just you were like 2 steps away from Satanism at that point.
I'm curious, when you mentioned the gum wrapper on the ground, I'm like, I wonder which gum wrapper was more satanic than the others, if there's brands that you should
that's a good
away
point.
from.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Bazooka Joe, perhaps. I don't know. Some of those comics were a bit edgy. Oh, they had fortunes in them too, so that had to be the one.
Oh, definitely.
Well, yeah, and see, this is the reason why what I used to always freshen my breath with Christian mints like Testaments.
Testaments, those were great. Yeah,
those were real. Yeah, you don't want to. You're not freshening your breath with secular mints, are you?
Yeah.
No, you need Christian mints, right?
Did Testaments go extinct with family Christian stores? I'm not sure because I don't see them anymore. Yeah. They were good. They were good quality mints. Yeah.
This feels like a loss to the world, actually.
It does. It was a blow.
What I see on your social media, and I think in a book that you've written, The Atheistic Theist, this seems like such a contrast, and I'm just dying to know, what does this mean?
Yeah, well, see, my journey took a lot of twists and turns, and the first thing that I really ran into, like a brick wall, was grace, and I ran into it at the end of a long sprint of legalism and all that stuff that I described before. And like I said, I came to a point where it just wasn't working anymore. I wasn't seeing the results I was supposed to be seeing. Things were happening to me that weren't supposed to happen to someone like me, quote unquote, because I was doing all the right things, and I was supposed to have the blood shield around me, and none of that was supposed to be able to get in, but yet it was getting in. And my belief system, it just failed me. And I really think that sometimes, and I don't say this arrogantly or pridefully because I don't really take any pride in it, but I think a lot of people who have that basic belief system never really take it to the extreme that it actually calls you to take it to. And as a result, they never end up discovering that it doesn't work. And I think I was maybe a person who was just crazy enough to actually try it. And I hit the wall that exists at the end of it and realized it did not work. And and then I just discovered grace. And for the first time in my life, my mind was freed. I wasn't burdened down by a fear of a wrathful God, or a fear that changing my mind about something meant I was going to get hit by a church bus one night and go to hell. I mean, it was just like I could finally think. I was finally free because I didn't have all those nagging thoughts and all those fears. And so for a while I was just absolutely possessed by the notion of grace. And it was like being everything everybody always described being born again as being. I always questioned whether I even was, because I never had that crazy experience everyone described. But this was like that to me. Discovering God like this was like that. But something weird happened, and it was that because I was actually finally able to think, after a few years, my beliefs just started deconstructing themselves. It was like, well, what am I really saying grace is? I'm saying that grace is, well, God was once angry at me, and he was once this boiling, pot of wrath, but then he poured it all out on his son. And now he abused himself, and in so doing appeased himself. And now I'm no longer on the wrong end of his wrath. In fact, he has no wrath anymore because he poured it all out on Jesus and all this kind of stuff. And I started thinking about those things I could not have possibly thought about while in the throes of legalism, because I wasn't allowed to. Now I could. And so my beliefs started taking themselves apart. And, just one by one, different things fell. Eternal conscious torment, penal substitutionary atonement, the basics. And then it got right down to the, human suffering and the things that I saw as a pastor, because I was part of a pastoral staff for 12 years. That was what I did full time. And, I started to really see human suffering up close, people dying that should not have died, just things that I was not equipped for. And it started tearing at the fabrics of belief itself. And, I found myself for a period of time serving on a pastoral staff while also being an atheist for all suits and purposes. And I've come to think that I don't think a pastor is really doing their job if they haven't preached at least 2 sermons as an atheist, because I think it means you're probably not thinking as much as you should be. But, at the time, it was just absolutely, it was devastating. And so I lost belief, and I really thought that I was losing faith altogether. And now on the other side of it, I realized that God was actually cleansing and purging my belief system. And I didn't just need a few tweaks. I didn't just need, the furniture rearranged and a new coat of paint. I needed my God to die so that I could actually encounter the God who is. And, that was really what I experienced. And I came to, over the course of several years of study and prayer and being alone with my thoughts when I wasn't praying, I came to the conclusion, I came to agree with Chesterton, Zizek, and others that Christianity is the purest and truest form of atheism, because it's in Christianity that all of our God concepts are dismantled and cleansed and purged so that we can actually encounter the God who is. And I used to think the aim of the gospel was to make godless men godly, but I now realize the gospel sometimes must first make the godly godless so that we can meet God. And that was
Wait, say that again. The gospel must...
Yeah, no, I used to
rich.
think the purpose of the gospel was to make the godless godly, but I now realize that the purpose of the gospel, or at least a function of the gospel, is to make the godly godless so that we might encounter the God who is, because we can encounter the reality of God. We can have genuine experiences and encounters with the God who actually is, but if those experiences are first passing through this filter of this God concept we've inherited, they come to us in a polluted form. And we end up thinking those encounters and experiences confirm the beliefs about God we've had. And so I think, for me, atheism was the best thing that ever happened to my Christianity. And, I think it was Simone Weil who said there's 2 types of atheism, of which one is a purification of the notion of God. And that was what I experienced. And as I said, it was the best thing that ever happened to my faith.
Yeah. Here's what I find so fascinating about what you're saying, Jeff. I mean, man, I totally agree with you. But it makes me wonder if this is really kind of what Jesus was getting at when he would say things like, you must be born again, which when he said this to a Pharisee, which was essentially know nothing, become a baby again, start from scratch again, right? Or when Jesus said things like, unless you become like a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom. It's what it feels like that. It's like, it's very similar to what you're saying. It's like we have these preconceived notions of God and who God is and what God's like, and it's built on years and eon, thousands of years of theology and all these different things. And it's like, it really makes it almost impossible for us to truly experience God, just, from a blank slate, really just like beginning from zero. And is that what you're saying? That seems like that's what you're suggesting.
Essentially, yes. I think, I think we think that if we dig deep enough and get to the bottom of the idol pile, if you will, we will find the true image of God that we have just kind of covered over the years with all these false notions. But I've come to think that's utterly false. And I think that if we get to the bottom of the idol pile, what we actually will find are our own desires for immortality and our own desires for a perfect sort of perfection that we, in that Feuerbachian sense, project out into the cosmos, and we create gods out of our own desires, and you'll never find, well, maybe I haven't studied mythology enough, but I don't think you'll ever find a God who is the ancient equivalent of an Uber driver or the ancient equivalent of a pizza delivery guy. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's really not what anyone wants as their ultimate purpose in life. What you will find is gods who are ultimate versions sometimes of everyday things. You take the everyday and you kind of, control T and stretch it out to the infinite. And that's sort of what our gods were. And they start with our own desires for perfection and immortality and to be bigger than we sense ourselves as being. And then we project that image out into the cosmos and we forget that it's us, and they become our gods. And eventually they become uncoupled from us. And then they loom over us in perfection and remind us of everything we're not, but wish that we were. And those are our idols. And so the thing we create to be our savior ends up being our tormentor. What we create as a heaven ends up becoming hell for us. And so what God does in Jesus is he apocalyptically breaks into this world that is populated by these gods that are us, idealized versions of ourselves. And he says, no, 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 no. The divine does not lie at the top of your towers of Babel. The divine is at the bottom with you. And this is what the divine truly is. And it's a human being who sweats, who bleeds, who breathes, and says, this is where you will find the divine. And the Father even responds to the Son emptying himself and divesting himself of everything we think of when we think of the divine by saying, to you I give the name that's above every other name. This is the truth of who I am. I'm not God as you think of God as being. And so I think salvation in one sense is seeing in the face of Jesus that God is like us. And so we don't need to be saved from who we are. We can, in a sense, sink into who we are and experience God where we are and as who we are. And so to your question, I mean, yeah, we're always coming at God, looking at God through these filters. And the filter we're looking through is us and what we think the divine is. And what we think the divine is us times infinity. And what God shows us he actually is basically what we are every day. And that's where we can find God, and that's where we can find the divine at work and at play.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, that when you say, or when I hear atheists, like they rightfully say, like, oh, Zeus doesn't exist and all these gods throughout the eons don't exist. And on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, I agree. But on the other hand, the fact that we create them and they fundamentally change the world around us.
Yeah.
So in a way, they do exist, which is kind of this. I'm getting to the place, I don't know about you, that like all the truths of the universe are almost paradoxical. Like these things that don't really exist create a universe that is so much different than if they didn't exist. You know, so it's really bizarre.
Yeah.
And then Jesus steps in and undermines the whole thing. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, he shoves a spike in the spoke of our mythology and sends us tumbling over the handlebars. And you know, it's a discombobulating experience to really experience God as human and as revealed in Jesus. At least it was for me, because for me, God was always up there and out there. He was certainly not down here and at hand. And but that's what I've encountered in Jesus. And I guess that's what I mean too when I say some see it as limiting. But no, the limitation is me thinking that God is just the ultimate version of me. I think that's absolute limitation. But discovering that what lies on the surface is actually deep, you know, and to put it as Bonhoeffer said, that the beyond is in our midst, you know, to discover that, I mean, that's power right there.
It's in a way, I feel like, and correct me if I'm totally off, what you're describing is almost a return to a particular kind of orthodoxy, but with a twist, and not a distorted, super fundamentalist evangelical orthodoxy, but the kind of expansive orthodoxy, like where in the Christian year we have ordinary time. Right. Where we're invited to see God in the ordinary. Yeah. And I know not every person listening to this, you know, will sort of celebrate that Christian year, but you know, that like in the cup and in the bread, those are ordinary things, and we can experience extraordinary grace there. I'm kind of wondering if that resonates with you, or if I've gone in a direction that's actually not reflecting you.
No, it absolutely 100% does. You know, years ago, I was jogging one night. I don't know, it was like 8 or 9 at night. And I was on a long jog. It was probably like 6 or 7 miles. And I was listening to worship music in my headphones and, I don't know, praying in tongues or something. I'm just guessing.
And fasting. Fasting and jogging 6 or 7 miles.
Definitely fasting. Experience. Yeah. And so, I'm jogging. It's late at night. And I'm, you know, in the throes of a worship experience. And my phone rings. And I pull my phone out of my pocket, and it's my wife. And of course, the ring interrupted the worship music. And, you know, I declined the call, put the phone back in my pocket, and kept running because I was praying.
Dang, she totally knew you did that.
And of course she did. Yeah. And, you know,
you just got to let it ring until the answering thing picks it up.
I've learned that. No, actually, I've learned to just answer it. But I did not run like 10 more steps to where I felt like I literally hit a brick wall. I stopped, like I hit something. And I really felt the Spirit speak deep within and said, if you don't rid your life of the concept of distractions, you are going to destroy your life and the lives of everyone else in it. And And it was just this idea that I really saw this call from my wife as being a distraction from a spiritual experience I felt like I was on the brink of having. And what I felt in that moment was that you have to rid your life of the idea of distractions. You think there are things that can actually pull you out of this, but you're always in this. And in this moment, my voice to you was on the other side of that phone call in the voice of your wife. No matter what it was she was going to say to you, that was where you were to find me in this moment. But instead, no, you thought you were going to find me on this spiritual jog you were on listening to your worship music. But that's where I was. And I think I totally hear what you're saying, that yes, it's the ordinary that, I think it's a quote from Richard Kearney that says that the surface is the deepest place. There's the great, as kingfishers catch fire, the great poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins, that, Christ is present in 10,000 places and faces, not his own. And it's the ordinary stuff where we miss God. And, that's why mysticism appeals to me so much, because I really, over the years, learned to just encounter God in the ordinary stuff. And, I think it was also Gerard Manley Hopkins who says that, the whole world is aflame with God, and we miss it. It's right under our noses all the time, and we miss it because we have been trained to look up to find God, but it's actually looking down it's in the looking down that we often find God, actually. If that answers the question.
Yeah, totally.
No, Jeff, this is so good. I tell you what, I think you've blown my mind at least twice in this conversation, in a very good way. This is so good. Well, so if people are listening and they also are pretty excited about the kind of concepts that you're unpacking and the things you're discussing, how can they learn more about you and these concepts that you have? I mean, do you have books? Do you have a blog? Do you have a podcast, a YouTube channel? Like, how can people keep up with you?
Yeah, well, as of this recording, I'm actually starting a podcast. I'm actually going to be probably recording my first solo episode tonight, but it's just simply called The Religionless Podcast. So by the time this airs, that will be up, I'm sure. They can visit me on my website, jeff-turner.com. It is presently under construction, but it should be up and running very soon. I'm pretty active on social media, especially Facebook, showing my age, but the others I just haven't quite learned yet. But I am very active on Facebook. You can look up facebook.com/Sound of Awakening Ministries. That's our old ministry name, but I've just kept it. But I'm very active on there. I post quite a bit, very often, at least every day. I'm on Twitter as well, at Jeff Turner SOA. I'm also on Instagram at Jeff Turner _SOA. Twitter and Instagram, I'm not as active on. But if you look me up on Facebook, I put stuff out all the time on Facebook. I do also have 2 books. My first book is called Saints in the Arms of a Happy God, an obvious riff-off of Jonathan Edwards' Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. That came out in 2014. That's about a 420-page just journey through my theological deconstruction. And then my most recent book, which actually isn't that recent, it came out in 2016 now, but it's called The Atheistic Theist, Why There Is No God and You Should Follow Him. So those are available on Amazon. I am working on a couple new books right now. I have another one that I hope to have out by the fall, called A Sacred Yes, Christianity for the Deconstructed. And so I have some other projects too, but that's the only one I'll mention right now.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Jeff. This has been a great conversation. I know it's going to resonate with our listeners. So if you are listening, make sure you check out Jeff on social media and check out his site and pick up his book. It is really good, The Atheistic Theist. And I know we're all excited for what you have coming down the pike. So thanks, man, for spending some time with us.
Oh, it was an honor and privilege. Thanks for having me, guys.
So rich. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Wow. Of all the Jeff Turners in the world, Jeff, you are the Jeff Turneriest.
Thank you, Jeff. That was great.
And thank you, Jeff, for writing the best part of From the Blood of Abel, the foreword.
And I want to know why I wasn't invited to the party.
Jeff asked you not to be there.
Yeah, he didn't want
Ooh.
Shots fired.
That's
Shots
not
fired.
true.
Burn.
Derek and Jeff are good friends. Jeff would never ask that. Neither would we.
Burn.
It's funny to think about, though.
Feisty today.
Yeah, and so we're, as Keith mentioned, we're continuing this series here, and every now and then you get to drop some things. You get to drop it like it's hot. You get to drop the hot potato. You get to drop the mic, and so we're going to turn to our man Matt Distefano. where he tells us about dropping the term Christian, and I am all down with it.
Well, I knew you would be, Derek. I'm not sure about our friends Katie and Keith, but
You ready to team up, Keith?
no, I know.
No, of course not.
Yeah, let's have a battle
Let's
royale.
just listen to you.
I'm just gonna listen.
No, I find it interesting that I was listening back to Katie, we'll call it your episode, on what Christian means to you and how it's less of a label and more of an identity. And it was one of those episodes. I don't do this all the time, but I listened back just as a listener, and I didn't listen back to try to hear things that we can improve on or come up with ideas or anything. I just listened to it as a listener. And I found myself nodding along to what you were saying. But then at the end of the day, I thought it was beautiful that we can have the relationship here on the podcast where I literally, unless I'm asked the question, Matt, are you a Christian any longer? I don't think of it, and it means nothing to me. And so I appreciate the fact that your identity is in the term Christian, I suppose. If correct me if I'm wrong, if I missed what you were trying to convey on that episode. But for me, I literally don't think about it. And yet there's a level of freedom that I find in not having that label. Or just, if you want to have that label on me, that's fine. I don't know. I don't know where I'm at with that. And I think that's okay. And I think there's a level of freedom for me to explore what is practical in living now, in being present now. So I have found personally that there is so much to learn from other faith traditions, from other people of faith, from people who don't have a faith tradition, but have different experiences than me, and just see what sticks in the here and now and how I can be a better person and treat others with more respect and compassion and empathy. And I literally don't care what tradition or no tradition that comes from.
Well, I just want to say that
you can burn me at the stake now if you want.
You're supposed to go full heretic. People say don't go full heretic. You're supposed to go full heretic. Well, goddamn it, I'm going full heretic. Fuck Christianity. There, I said it. I'm better.
Yeah.
Well, I'm fine with Christianity, but I don't like the form it currently takes in many circles.
Let me say this, because I listened to Katie's show just like you said, like a listener, and I nodded along a lot. And I really get it. I really get it, because there are people who say my identity is in Christ. Okay, and when you say that and you walk it out, that when there is evidential, or there's some evidence of it, okay, I'm down with that. But it's like when you're wearing this label and basically, you endorse people that embrace all of the 7 deadly sins, on a daily basis. I don't get it. So from where Katie is coming from, I get it. And I completely understand. And I'm completely in love with her rendition of it. It's beautiful. But I'm going to tell you something. The vast majority, and this is bordering on an indictment, but borderline, most people who identify themselves as Christians wouldn't know Christ if he bit them on the ass.
Matt, what I'm loving about your kind of statement about where you are is that you're very much in the story, if I'm interpreting that correctly. And it's not that I feel you're unsettled or that I sense you're unsettled, but you're living it. You're living where you are. You're living the questions about what informs you from the Christian tradition, from other traditions, and seeking to be the best you that you can be within that.
Yeah, it's Michelle and I talk about this in the book we're writing. It's you're not going anywhere in particular. You're just learning how to float. So we're calling the book "Learning to Float." Ooh. Because in this process, you realize to get anywhere, you stop splashing about in this ocean that we think we're drowning in, and we just learn how to float there. And it's that we're unsettled in a way. It may appear unsettled, but you're settled in that story, like you just said. And so a lot of people will, I've been accused of this, not a lot of people, but at times I've been accused of this. It's all about deconstruction for you. It's all about deconstruction. And it may appear like that, but it's not. It's being okay with the agnosticism about doctrines and dogmas. And I have my beliefs and I have my theories and my ideas, but I'm agnostic about a lot of it. And I really don't care all the ins and outs of how that plays out, because I've been able to hold on to things loosely and not like white knuckled like a lot of Christians
that's
are
not
at.
bothering you anymore.
No, I'm good with it, and I'm good if you're not there, and I'm good if Keith. Talking about Keith's episode and just knowing Keith in general for the last, I don't know how long we've known each other, 4 or 5 years. Like I'm pretty sure Keith would still consider himself a Christian. That's fantastic, and like it literally makes no difference in our relationship. So that's where I think like Katie, Keith, anyone who affirms Christianity but is still like my friend and is there's no like strings attached, then I think you're doing Christianity right.
Yep. I respect Christians. I respect certain Christians. I don't respect the institution of Christianity. Now, let me just say this because I got to clean this up, because somebody's going to come back and they're going to try to tar and feather me. I love me some Jesus. Listen, I love the fuck out of Jesus. I'm not kidding. But I really have nothing else for Christianity. I have nothing else for it. So when you talk about dropping that label, man, you talk about drop it like it's hot. Drop the mic, drop it. I've dropped it.
Like Snoop Dogg.
Hey,
dropped it.
For real.
So Matt, tell us what other things are informing you right now.
My epistemology starts in the present moment, like in direct experience. So I feel like if our starting place is not in direct experience, I think we're speaking out of turn. So I'll give you an example. Like if someone reads a book on physics and on the physics of a bicycle, and they read it and they say, I know how to ride a bicycle. Without riding a bicycle, I mean, you're kind of grasping at straws. You read a book. So to know how to ride a bicycle, you get on a bike and you fall over and you figure out the balance point and force and motion and all that. You figure it out with your body. So that's really informing me right now. And a big part of that is, I mean, it's as simple in the Buddhist tradition. It's as simple as breathing and breath, and just sitting in stillness. And that that's complicated at the same time, because our minds are so always working, especially like a mind like mine. It's always going. It's always thinking of ideas. It's always coming up with new projects and all this and that and work and all that. And so it's as simple as breathing and being present in the moment, but it's as complicated as getting rid of all those thoughts, or not even getting rid of them, just allowing those thoughts to be and just letting them float out there, not labeling them, not like doing anything with them, just letting them be.
So, it's what's so interesting for me is, I hear the sort of Buddhist training in there. And I think probably for me personally, my closest companion philosophy / religion / spiritual tradition would be Buddhism. Like that's the one that informs me the most after the Christian traditions that I draw from. And I think if I wasn't Christian, I'd probably be Jewish. If I wasn't Jewish, I'd probably be Buddhist. Yeah, those helped me a lot, though.
I would say for me, I mean, if I had to pick one, that would kind of defeat the Buddhist in me would say it's not about picking one or the other. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably say I'm more inclined for the practicality of it for Mahayana Buddhism. That's just where I'm at now.
One of the lovely things I think about Asian traditions and Asian religions is people actually don't feel confined to one. Most of the time, people are very comfortable to be fluid among religious traditions and to not have those labels. So I love that too.
Keith, I want to hear from you. I haven't heard your voice, man.
Well, I know I'm just listening. I think I would just want to say, as far as like, it's difficult when it comes to that label of Christian. Like, I don't know. I mean, I really have tried for several years now not to identify myself as specifically as a Christian. I would rather say that I'm fascinated with Jesus and I want to follow him. And, so I think I'm more Jesus centric without the label Christian, because there's just too much baggage with the label Christian. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, it's just hard to even nail down what do you even mean when you say Christian, because I'm sure when I say it, if I say it, I don't mean the same thing other people mean, most people, as I'm learning. But at the same time, it's sort of also, though, about being super, I see truth in all belief systems. Um, I'm interested in like meeting Muslims or Buddhists or Hindus or even atheists, and just hearing what people's thoughts are, and without judging them, without trying to change them. Again, most of that, all of that I just described doesn't describe any Christian, most Christians that I know. But you know what I mean? It's like trying to find a way to be someone who follows Jesus, or as Derek says, you know, I love the fuck out of Jesus. But which I think is, we did make a T-shirt.
That needs to be a T-shirt for sure.
But
Thank you very much.
to do that though in a way that's not exclusive, right? So like to love people first. I think that's the most important thing. Do we love human beings? Do we love people made in the image of God? Can we accept them for who they are without wanting to change them to be like us? And so, you know, even though I identify way more with Jesus specifically, I don't insist that everybody else has to do that. But I love where you're coming from, Matt. I think it's a really cool place, and especially the part about the focusing on the now. I think that's been something really that's helped me a lot lately too. There's so much peace and freedom in focusing on the now rather than living in the past or living in the present or in the future.
Well, and the now is so beautiful in that if you understand presence, you can visit the future and the past. You can be nostalgic. You can go play your old Nintendo games. I'm dating myself as an 80s kid, and be present with it. And you can think about future plans as long as you're present with it. And see, that's the beautiful thing about like non-duality, non-dual thinking, is that there's nothing wrong with nostalgia and future planning as long as you're present with it and they're in their rightful place. You're not stuck in like the guy who was a quarterback in high school back in the 80s, and he could, he's always living out of that place of, oh, I could have made it, bro, and never living in the presence like of now. And so I just think, again, it comes down to practicality. I know Jesus talked about the kingdom of God is at hand, it's within you, all that kind of stuff. I just feel like the language of Buddhism just strikes me at my core right now.
Right.
And it's where I'm at now. So where it's like, I'm not done with Jesus. Like Jesus is cool. Like we're good. Like me and Jesus are still tight. It's all good. People don't have to worry about my soul.
Jesus is my motherfucker.
People are going to be worried.
He's my. I know people are going to be worried, and I get that. I get that that's where people are at. If you live in the mindset of turn or burn, you've got eternal torment on the mind. I understand, like, you're going to be worried for me, my wife, my daughter, because we're not raising her right in the church. I get all that. It's just not where I'm at. And I'm not, for me, it's just silly. It's absurd now at this point. And
but I think is also so cool as well. I was just talking, I talked to Matthew Corman the other day, and he was talking about like the Gospel of Philip. And he quoted like 3 or 4 passages from the Gospel of Philip, which I'm not that familiar with.
That's not in the Bible, brother.
But dude, there were the passages he quoted were like amazing. They were so good. And then the other day, Derek, you had posted something on your Facebook page, which was some quotes from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and that made me go and I Googled it, and I started researching some quotes from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and damn, there were like 3 or 4 great quotes. I mean, almost quotes that like you could almost say to somebody that Jesus said this, and people would go, "Wow, that's really cool." And so I love finding those kinds of things, extra biblical sources that are saying things that actually are so in line with the kinds of the beautiful things that I see Jesus doing and saying.
I mean, you find it like in the Bhagavad Gita. It's all over the place.
I love that.
Yeah.
The one thing I've heard described that's really resonated with me probably about 10 years ago is that mystics from all the various traditions are like the treetops. And you can kind of skate along the treetops, and you're going to find similar profound truths stated differently among the treetops. And then about a year ago, my spiritual director, Elisa, I'll quote you. Thank you, Elisa, for telling me this. Shamans are like the roots. And the roots intertangle, and they say similar things. They draw from a similar well. Right?
Ooh, Katie, I'm going to quote that.
Well, I didn't come up with either one, but
mystics are the treetops, and shamans are the roots.
But yeah,
oh my God, that's
but
brilliant.
Matt, I feel like some of what you're saying is tying into both of those kind of images that I hold in my own spiritual walk. And for me, I hang my hat on a nail, and that nail is Christian. It's Christianity. But it doesn't mean I don't think there's treetops or roots either. But I love that you're living in the mystery of all that.
Yep.
That's
beautiful.
Yeah, I've gotten to a place where I'm convinced that if to use an analogy, if the moon is God, we are all pointing. The mystics or the people who are really seeking God are pointing at it from a different vantage point. So it may look a little different if you're in San Francisco or if you're in Shanghai or if you're in London, but we're all pointing toward the same thing, and so we all can okay, yeah, I see that. I read Thich Nhat Hanh, and I'm like, which I believe Living Buddha, Living Christ should be mandatory reading for every human being that's ever walked the earth, because I think that book is as divinely inspired as anything. Hit the heresy button on that one. Heresy. But it just resonates with me that the people who are truly seeking God, I'll say this. The mystics from different faith traditions are more in line with one another than a Christian mystic is with a Westboro Baptist Church member, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like the Dalai Lama is closer to Richard Rohr, is closer to Francis of Assisi than they are with Pastor Steve Anderson of that stupid-ass Baptist church, wherever he's at.
Right.
This reminds me of that opening sequence from Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee, where he's teaching a student and he says, it's like a finger pointing at the moon.
Yeah.
Don't focus on the finger or you'll miss all that heavenly glory.
Well, Marcus Borg uses that exact analogy about the finger pointing to the moon in reading the Bible again for the first time, which is...
Oh, does he?
Yeah, in the end of chapter 1, I think. And I've used this book so many times in my different classes. I used it with my undergrads when I was teaching undergrads. And his analogy is that the Bible is not God. The Bible points to God, or it points to a human experience with God. But God cannot be contained, within the pages of Scripture. Available on our bookstore, by the way. That particular book.
Nice plug.
Yeah, well, do what I can. Do what I can with
it. All goes back to Bruce Lee. It all goes back to Bruce Lee.
I had a disappointing moment.
He like water.
I had a disappointing moment with Buddhism, and Matt, I just wonder if you can illuminate this or elucidate this for people who may be unfamiliar. I did a lot of reading on Buddhism 12 years ago, 10 years ago, somewhere in there, and I still do from time to time. And it has this, for non-Asian Westerners, I think it has this kind of allure of everything being peaceful and everyone being in a meditative state. And that means you don't have problems. And then I started reading a book like by Buddhist for Buddhists. And it turns out that, nope, within the different orders, within the different monasteries, oh, look, there's sexism. Oh, look, there's dogma. Oh, look, there's all this stuff that every tradition has problems with. And I was like, damn it, that grass is not greener. It's not greener.
No, it's not. And I like to point out, like, Gandhi was a Hindu and he was killed by a Hindu.
Yep.
So I mean, like, you get all the different like, humans are gonna fuck shit up no matter where you're at. And I mean, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, like, there are going to be fundamentalists. There's going to be fuckery going on in every tradition.
That's my favorite word, by the way.
I did that one just for you. I know you like that one.
Yeah, that's fuckery. Fuckery. Sorry.
and I will also say about Buddhism, like, I don't particularly like the idea that you can just get rid of desire, and that's going to solve the problem. It's like, I don't think we can get rid of desire. So the Buddhists who would say, like, the goal is to renounce all desire. Well, as a mimetic theorist, as a Girardian, I'd say that's not even possible, dude. So I would push back heavily on that.
Wait, was Paul a Buddhist?
No, he was a Jew.
He really...
you should have learned this in seminary.
He really tried to get rid of people's desires, though.
Maybe he sat under a Bodhi tree for too long.
So.
But you know what? Joe Dispenza said that if we become selfless, then we get rid of our points in the past and the future, and we relegate, or we place ourselves in the now. Right. So it's this divesting of self, and that part of Buddhism I get. But the thing is, you can't divest yourself of human desire, because that divests you of your humanity. And that's why, Buddhism doesn't particularly appeal to me, although I have a lot of respect for it.
Yeah, I think you could say kind of like what I kind of agree with what Matt is saying is that whereas Buddhism is correct that desires are a source of our suffering. I think I would disagree like with Matt is that yes, you're right. Our desires can be the cause of some of our suffering, but the solution isn't to try to not have desires because that's not possible. It's more to redirect those desires towards something that doesn't bring suffering.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm sure there would be debate amongst Buddhist monks and within their own theology, if you will, their own doctrine, with how you do that, or even if you do that. And just like any faith tradition, like Katie alluded to, like there is going to be disagreement. And so again, I wouldn't call myself a Buddhist per se. I don't think about these labels. I just try to glean whatever I can glean out of life, starting with my direct experiences, and then use it appropriately to better my situation. And I don't mean selflessly, just better my life for the sake of others, for my neighbors, for my friends, for my family, and it'll all work out in the end. I mean,
Matt, I think what I'm also really enjoying and respecting about your journey, your dropping of labels, is you're not culturally appropriating while you're doing it. And very often that's what I witness people doing. They draw a little bit from this, they draw a little bit from that, and they make it all conform to their ideas of how things should be without respecting traditions within their own context.
Yeah.
And so
I try not to culturally appropriate as much as I can.
He doesn't have to culturally appropriate because I'll be the one to tell you that Matt is black than a motherfucker.
Hey, if you're gonna give me my black card, I'll take it.
Just like Buddha.
Yep. Or
but
Jesus.
Yeah. Right. But that happens so often, especially among the spiritual but not religious crowd, which is not a term that I've heard you use. Just a point of analogy. But it's kind of like, oh no, I can take a little from Buddha, I can take a little from this, that, or the other, but it ends up being actually sometimes that has the effect of being all about the person and not about the richness of the spiritual tapestry.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. Spiritual tapestry.
Yeah. That really resonated with me.
Yeah. Well, so as someone who if my identity is Christian, that doesn't mean I can't respect the truths in all religions while remaining firm in my own tradition, because I'm not trying to place them or compare them to mine. Let them stand how they are and feel and experience that moment and that truth within them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without having to graft them onto something that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great perspective.
And it is difficult to do. I'm sure. I mean, I know it's got to be easy to culturally appropriate when we don't even think about it. I mean, it's just something that is it's a tightrope to not do that.
Oh yeah, I'm good at it. Yeah, but be conscious doing it.
I think we all are.
Yeah, it is tough because, like, in some ways, I think modern Americans are very kind of used to sort of playing Mr. Potato Head with all kinds of things. And I like this, I'll glob this on, but I like this, I'll do this. And
oh God, Mr. Potato Head!
You don't even know.
Great analogy.
Yeah.
I made you, it's true. Mr. Potato Head, I made you.
Well, I mean, this is, I appreciate you guys letting me back clean up and kind of end our series with talking about, I guess, apostasy. Most Christians would consider me an apostate at this point.
Yeah,
I'm okay with
a podcast maybe about apostasy. That would be
yeah.
I could totally milk that, baby.
You probably could.
What's beyond apostasy?
I don't know. Is
freedom?
That's where I am. I'm past that.
As you can all imagine, fellow Christians call me, nasty names all the time. So I'm good with my apostate role. It's fine.
You're doing some metaphysical stuff, Katie. I mean, you're going into you're treading into waters that's not allowable. I mean, we're doing enough of that on the show, like with questioning atonement theories, but you've gone in it heavy.
Yeah,
we are. Hey, that's why we're all here on this plane together.
If you guys missed Katie's talk in NAMAD 2020 about Reiki, and that was eye opening. It's brilliant.
Oh, I'm so happy. I've been Reikiing myself in my house all weekend with this.
Oh man,
yeah.
My wife's a Reiki practitioner, So
It's good to be married to a Reiki practitioner.
it is.
Can I admit something? I don't even know what that is.
No, I have no idea. I thought who's Ricky? Ricky who?
Ricky, don't lose
is
that number.
It's a Japanese modality of energy healing. So
Oh, now I get it. Thank you.
Reiki.
Yeah, no, I know what Ricky is. I heard him say Ricky, and I thought it was like the guy's name. Like I don't remember the Ricky story.
Yeah. Keith thought it was
Derek,
Enrique Iglesias or something, right?
Derek,
I
we
thought
should
you were-
start a Ricky podcast.
Yeah, there we go. I'm down.
I thought we were talking about a former caller into the hotline, but
Yeah, Ricky.
that's a different Ricky.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you liked this episode and you want to check out more, make sure you head on over to heretichappyhour.com. And as Katie mentioned, we have a bookstore. So if you are into books, which you lovely listeners are smart, you read. So we have a list of books from our previous Heretics of the Week. We have as many of them as possible. And most of them are about 15% off. And they go towards supporting the show. So I know it's getting close to Christmas, but you can still order some books for people. It might come after Christmas, but close enough, right? So head on over to heretichappyhour.com, check out the bookstore, and see if any of those books resonate with you.
Yeah, definitely pick up reading the Bible again for the first time. It's eye-opening and very gentle. I like his tone in there a lot. Yeah. And we also have 2 Facebook groups. So every single one of you, if you're not a member of Heresy After Hours, come join us there. We have over 2,000 heretics. They're all asking tough questions. We're snarky. We're supportive. We're beautiful. Sometimes we're a little ugly. And we all have a really fun time in there. We also have a Facebook group that's exclusive for our Patreon members. Mm-hmm. And yes, very, very exclusive. And you get access to us, the 4 podcast hosts, and ask all the really tough questions, give out resources. We have a really fun time in there too.
Oh, yes. And speaking of Patreon, listen, if you love the Heretic Happy Hour podcast, and we know you do because you've made it this far, you're missing out, because you should go over to the patreon.com/Heretic Happy Hour page. And for just a few pennies a week, or a day, I guess, really, a few pennies a day, you can support your favorite podcast, which of course is the Heretic Happy Hour. And as a huge thank you, we're going to give you so many cool and amazing things, including like PDFs of some of our books, weekly video posts. Just all kinds of cool stuff. And there's already tons of stuff on there. So if you start supporting us, even at like the $2 a month level, which is, come on, $2 a month, you're going to unlock so much amazing content. We record bonus interviews. We record extra podcast content. After this show ends, we keep talking and add even more awesome stuff to the Patreon page. Plus, you also get access to the private Patreon group, the Heretic Happy Hour Facebook group. So much good stuff. Go check it out.
Oh, and definitely check it out. And someone just a little worm in my ear. Yeah, no, Marcus Borg's book is not on there. Sorry, guys. I misrepresented the podcast. I wanted it. I want to manifest it to be on.
Well, you know why? Because Marcus Borg was never on. He was never Heretic of the Week. So
from heaven, heaven. Yeah.
I would love to have met that guy. I tell you what, I wish we could have interviewed him.
Maybe we can add it. We can do something. Add his book on there.
Yeah, let's just cheat. Just add it anyway.
And so, folks, if you like this podcast and you enjoy the content and all the awesome work that these hosts and our producer do, please go to iTunes and rate us 5 stars, or Satan himself, will send a personal monkey to ride your back that you can't drop.
You're manifesting a demon here. Like,
Jesus
Marcus
Christ.
Borg to a demon.
Well, on next episode, we will exercise Derek.
Derek's demon. Yes.
You damn right.
Oh, that just made my week. Thank you so much.
Oh man, the power of Christ compels you.